that we're going to get you with. We're going to actually, I'm just kidding. See, this is what I'm talking about. Ready for anything. We're not going to do a break because we just have that much to get to on the show today. So we're actually going to get right into baseball. And I think this is a punishment because I'm surrounded by New York fans, and they said, we're not going to give you a break before you have to talk about the thing that just most recently broke your heart. So, Brian, I guess no break. We're getting right into it. ALCS, Astros win Game 6, 5-0 over the Red Sox. It'll be their Houston's third World Series appearance in 5 years. I just have to take a deep breath because before we get into this segment. Let's start with the Astros, and then we'll get into what went wrong with the Red Sox. I don't know if you watched the game, but rookie right-handed pitcher Luis Garcia was lights out.
Yeah, he pitched great. I was watching the game. It was a great game to watch. I mean, it was close up until the 8th inning, and high drama, everything you want out of a playoff baseball game. But Luis Garcia, man, he threw the ball really well. 5 2/3 innings, shut out the Red Sox. Obviously, I mean, he just really stepped up. When the whole pitching staff of the Astros really just stepped up, which I guess we can get into later with the Red Sox and how their offense just didn't show up. But yeah, very, very good night for the Houston pitching staff.
And definitely, and what struck me was he pitched in Game 2, and it was like there was 2 different pitchers on the mound. I mean, in Game 2, 1 inning pitch, 2 hits, 5 earned runs, and then he comes out of this one, and like you mentioned, 0 earned runs, 7 Ks. His cutter was unbelievable, 12 whiffs on 13 cuts for the Red Sox hitters against that pitch. And he just seemed to be so much more locked in. And during the broadcast, they mentioned a small mechanical change he made. I guess he re-angled the way his foot was on the mound. And somehow, whatever that small little thing that his foot was doing worked because his velocity was up significantly, a lot tighter spins on his breaking balls. And like I said, just a whole different pitcher for this team.
Well, yeah, clearly he did something right. I mean, what I was coming into in Game 6 last night, I was really wondering how he was going to rebound after just getting shelled in Game 2. But, I mean, clearly he bounced back nicely. I mean, he got the job done, and the Astros are in the World Series now. No grand slams for the Red Sox last night, so that's a change of pace. Luis Garcia, man, he got the job done, and that's about all you can ask for out of him.
Yeah, and he wasn't the only one to step up out of that battery. Maldonado, people have been questioning why he's been in that lineup this whole series, but every time they're saying it's for his defense. And last night that was on display when he had that big momentum-changing play. I believe it was in the 6th when he threw out Verdugo for the last out of the inning after a strikeout. I mean, that just really it took all the life out of the Red Sox, and it gave all of it to the Astros. So he stepped up then. And Yordan Alvarez, he ends up being named the ALCS MVP honors. He was just ridiculous on the offensive side for the Stros. He hit 521, 538, 869 for a slash, 3 doubles, 1 triple, 1 home run, 6 RBIs, 7 runs scored. I mean, he recorded a hit in every game. This man was just on fire for the Astros.
They kept bringing up the stats last night that he basically was outperforming the entire Red Sox team. I mean, last night he was just crazy. 4 for 4, 2 doubles, a triple, home run away from the cycle, which usually this guy's he has no problem hitting the home runs, but last night he just couldn't get the cycle to really have the historic performance. But I mean, 4 for 4 in the elimination game, and especially in the last 3 games of this series too. He was just a monster. 12 for 23, 521, deservedly the ALCS MVP, and the Red Sox just could not stop him. They had no answer.
Yeah, and what really struck me was that he, not only was he hot, like you just said, but he also was hot when it mattered, which the Red Sox simply were not. But, I mean, you look at some of his hits throughout this series. Game 1, he gets a sac fly in the bottom of the 1st to get the Astros on the board first. Game 4, he starts that 9th inning rally with an RBI single. Game 5, he leads off the 2nd with a homer. He singles off the wall, 2-run RBI double. He puts them up 3-0. Game 6, again on the board first again because of his double RBI, doubles again, triples like you mentioned. So he was just so clutch for them when it mattered. And it's funny, you look at how hot he was compared to the Red Sox. In the last 3 games, he was 8 for 12, 5 RBIs, 4 runs, 5 extra base hits. Compare that to the Red Sox as an entire team who were 10 for 83, 3 RBIs, 3 runs, and 6 extra base hits. So they had fewer RBIs and runs as a team than this one player did for Houston combined. So not great, definitely not great. But he's not the only hitter who's been strong recently. Kyle Tucker had that three home run blast in the eighth to give the Houston that 5-0 lead. That was his second 2-out 3-home run, 2-out home run in the postseason. So their hitters have just been timely.
Yeah, I mean, this lineup for Houston's ridiculous. I mean, you go top to bottom. I mean, Yuli Gurriel led the league in batting average this year, and he was hitting 7th last night. Like, just imagine that. He was hitting 7th. But you mentioned Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker really stepped up in the regular season. He had a great year, and now he's continuing that in the playoffs. And that's the big thing too. I mean, a couple of guys in the Astros order are struggling a little bit. Like Bregman didn't have a great series, but they have plenty of depth and plenty of talent to pick up the slack. And I mean, if you're the Dodgers or the Braves, this lineup is terrifying. I mean, top to bottom, there's no real hole into this lineup until you get to the last maybe 2 guys in the order. But I mean, the 1 through 7, that's about as good as you can get. If you're an opposing pitcher, you better watch out for these guys.
Yeah, you're so right. And they might be getting hot at the perfect time. And the exact opposite of that were the Red Sox, who got hot at the wrong time and got very cold at the worst time. And before we get into the Dodgers and the Braves and that ALCS series, we're going to have to spend a little bit of time breaking down this Red Sox team.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate your condolences. I know the other guys, the producers back there, are probably very happy to hear me talk about how bad the Red Sox have been, but we got to do it. It's a job, got to do it. So let's start with that game yesterday. They didn't hit. They didn't. That was the first Red Sox elimination game in history, in their postseason history, that they failed to score at least one run. So, it really came. You can't blame Alex Cora. I mean, there were some questionable things. You could say, oh, should have stayed in there one more time through the lineup? Danny Santana getting that nod off the bench as their first pinch hitter. That was really weird. I don't really understand that. But at the same time, it doesn't come down to one guy. It was their whole offense. Evaldi was good for them too on the pitching side of things. He struck out the side with bases loaded in the 4th, and if that's not enough to get this lineup going, I really don't know what else.
Yeah, well, you can say all you want about Alex Cora. Oh, he should have left the Evaldi in longer. How can you only take him out after 60 or so pitches? But what it comes down to is you can't win if you can't score. You're not going to win by putting 0 runs up. It's literally impossible to win, and that's exactly what happened last night. You only have 2 hits, a Kike Hernandez triple, and then that's really your only huge spark on offense. And then you can't come through with that. You can't bring run across there. I mean, you talk about going cold at the worst time. And it's not just Game 6 either. It was the whole tail end of the series, You win big in Game 3, and you're thinking, okay, the Red Sox, they could surprise a lot of people, and then it's just a dud after that. Games 4, 5, and 6. I mean, look, did you see the stat that in the last 25 innings of this series, they scored 1 run? After the first inning of Game 4, they scored 1 run the entire way. So they got shut out the rest of the 8 innings of Game 4, scored 1 run in Game 5, and then obviously shut out last night. That's not a recipe for success. You're not going to win an October baseball series by doing that.
Listen, you can't win a baseball game if you don't score runs. You just can't.
Yeah,
it's
the basics.
It's the fundamentals of the sport. For any sport, you got to score. You got to score. And I think you're right. The difference between the first 3 games for the Red Sox and the last 3 games of the Red Sox is really a microcosm for this whole season for this team. I mean, we saw 2 different Red Sox teams the whole year. You had this one team that has all this life. They're unstoppable. They just one hitter passes the bat to another hitter, passes the bat to another hit. You have 3 grand slams within 11 innings. I mean, they're pitching well. And then you have the Red Sox that we saw yesterday in the last 3 games where there's just nothing. I mean, there's just literally nothing. They make stupid mistakes on the bases. They can't find a way to string runs across the board. Their pitching's very average, especially their bullpen. So, I mean, to be fair, I've been a little harsh. To be fair, they were not supposed to be here.
Nope.
Nobody picked Boston to make it this far, and I think as a Boston fan, that's kind of why it's so heartbreaking because we're spoiled. We're so used to being a championship team. So when we get that close, it's just frustrating to see them not be able to pull it out. But they were clearly behind Tampa Bay in the standings. They finished tied with the Yankees pretty much. They made the wild card game on the last day of the season. they were the lower seed the whole time, and yet somehow they passed the Yankees, they passed the Rays, and they couldn't get it done against the Astros. So, they weren't really supposed to be here. So I can't really be that mad.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't. They were a last-place team last year, and coming to this year, it was looking like, oh, here we go again. First 3 games of the year, you get swept by the Orioles at home. I mean, you talk about rough, but then they come back around, and I'm really glad you mentioned that this series was almost like a microcosm of the whole season, because in the first 4 months or so, up until the trade deadline, you had the Red Sox looking like one of the best teams in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
They owned the best record in baseball at one point, and they were in first place by a considerable margin. They really controlled their own destiny, and then in August, they just totally fell apart. I mean, they just couldn't beat anybody, and all of a sudden the Yankees went from 10.5 games behind them to passing them in the standings. So, and then you see much of the same of that in this postseason. They rattle off a couple of huge wins against the Yankees, and then beat the Rays, which I didn't expect at all.
Didn't expect that.
I mean, the Rays were incredible. They won 100 games, and they just looked like they didn't lose. But then the Red Sox come in and take care of business. But then in this series, the Red Sox get a lead, and then all of a sudden, the same problems start coming through, especially with the pitching staff. I mean, credit to Eovaldi. He was pitching on short rest, and I guess that's why he got yanked early. But, I mean, the bullpen was always going to be a problem coming into the postseason for the Red Sox, and it took a while, but it kind of reared its ugly head. I mean, the Red Sox, you have Garrett Whitlock is good. He's a good piece of that bullpen, and who stepped up? Nick Pivetta stepped up, and he pitched really well. Other than that, who can you go to depend on to get big outs?
Shouldn't have been Ottavino.
Definitely not Adam Ottavino. I mean, trust me, I know all about him in his days in New York, and he just couldn't get the job done. I mean, when Kyle Tucker hit that bomb, I mean, if it's 2-0, the Red Sox have some sort of chance to maybe mount a rally and get back into it, but when you give a 3-run bomb and it's 5-0, I mean, that's just killer. So you got to be disappointed as a Red Sox fan. Obviously, they weren't supposed to be there, and we weren't supposed to be in this position, so you got to look at it as a success, but obviously disappointed with the outcome.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the bullpen, and you mentioned Whitlock, and to me, that was maybe the only coaching decision that Alex Cora made in the series that I'm still hung up on, because I think down 2-0 in a game like that, facing elimination in the 8th, why do you not go to Whitlock?
He's your best
closer.
Guy.
Exactly. Like, you can't play for tomorrow, because there is no tomorrow. You have to play for that game, and not going down with your best pitcher, that doesn't make sense to me. Especially, like you mentioned, this is a bullpen that has been your weakness for most of the season. So, I mean, Taylor Hawk, he was good, but Ottavino, you're a Yankees fan. That's not the guy you're going to when your season, not just your game, but your season is on the line. And to be fair, I think had Tucker hit that home run, had he not hit that home run, I still think the Red Sox offense is more to blame in the situation. But to me, I didn't really understand that one.
Yeah, but I mean, you gotta pitch your best guys. That's what it comes down to. That's an issue I have with a lot of managing today in baseball. It's managers like we got to rest this guy for tomorrow. We gotta make sure that he's good to go. But it's like there might not be a Game 7, and there isn't now. So you gotta go to your best guys. Keep it close. I mean, it sounds so simple and so easy, but at the same time, some guys struggle with it. And I mean, I don't blame Alex Cora for losing the series. I think Alex Cora is the reason they were here.
I agree.
In the first place, but it just comes down to the offense, and then obviously the issues with the bullpen certainly doesn't help.